Okay, so let me introduce our next speaker, for Clarke. Clarke is right on the screen here. In the meantime, let me introduce you to him. Clarke started Stembolt, originally free running technologies, over 7 years ago, building it to a company of 20 developers working almost exclusively in e-commerce. Clarke's 15 years of programming and open source experience helped Stembolt port free commerce to create Solidus, which has started gaining wide adoption in the open source Rails e-commerce world. So let's give him also a round of applause. Clarke.
Okay, testing. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. All right, I'm a pretty loud person in general, so with the microphone, this is kind of dangerous. If this gets too loud, someone in the audience, just give me one of these and I'll try to quiet her down.
Do you want to help me with the slides?
I'll be okay. Yeah, I forgot my clicker, but I'll figure it out. I'll wander around a lot and just run back and forth. Okay, so you guys have signed up to listen to me complain about e-commerce. This is something everyone in my office has to hear me do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I will message you about it late at night when something else angers me. A little bit about me, because this is kind of important, is I have been a programmer for a really long time. It means, yes, I have experience in a bunch of things, but it also means I'm an old and bitter person. So you're going to have to take everything I say with a grain of salt. I started Stembolt 9 years ago with my business partner, Sean Taylor. We started with a great idea. Our business plan was really simple. We wrote it on a beer napkin. It said, write code for money. Our plan was to find people that had money that needed code. We'd swoop in, provide the code, leave, and make a bunch of cash on the way out. 9 years later, we are 28 full-time developers, largely the same company we started with. We realized pretty early on the swoop in was easy for us, the swoop out, not so much. We ended up maintaining projects, maintaining client relationships for years and years and years, which led us into the e-commerce sphere. It turned out to be a really great place for a bunch of developers that only really cared about like shipping good code, shipping off it, and building these relationships. I am one of the 4 maintainers of a platform called Solidus, so I super appreciated Katrina's talk in that everything she said is absolutely accurate. Do it for even a month, maintaining any kind of active program or project, and you will be amazed at how much effort it takes. Solidus was a fork of a popular Rails mountable engine called Ecommerce. Unfortunately, and this is a few years in the past now, they were acquired by a company, big payment provider, no longer was focusing on the open source. So my company, as well as a few other people, decided, hey, unfortunately, really tough thing to do for the open source ecosystem, but we had to fork it. And we did. An 8-year-old code base. This originally started 8 years ago, I think on Rails 2. If this were a real estate listing, it would say this code base had character. It was a bit of a fixer-upper. But it's successful. We run it on I think well over a dozen stores now, and it's been adopted by the community at large. There are a bunch of people from Magma that also are involved and run it themselves. I was lucky enough to meet somebody whose pull request had apparently merged earlier. I have a goal here, and this goal is unfortunate, and it's to make you scared of e-commerce. I wasn't scared enough of e-commerce when I started it. I looked at it as it's code. I know code. I can do code. No problem. I'm going to go through and going to do it. The question is, what does that look like? And it definitely doesn't look like this. This is an irrational fear of the monsters under your bed. And that is not the type of fear I hope everyone has about e-commerce. I hope we can build a understanding of what kind of fear I want you to have. I have put together an exhaustive list of all of the bad things in my life. And you're going to realize I probably don't live that bad of a life when I have Instagram campaigns on my list of all the bad things. These, of course, come from my clients if you can convince a celebrity, probably with money, to hawk your product on Instagram, congratulations, you're going to get 10,000 times your normal traffic in about 30 seconds. So there are bad things in my life, and I tried to figure out how many of them were e-commerce related. So I have color-coded these for you. You're going to see most of them in red. These are e-com specific things that I have. I have the overlap of lawyers and taxes, which I have both in my personal life and my e-com, and I have a few that were specifically for myself. Although I'll warn you right now, this is a localization problem. If you were a audience that I may be more used to talking, a bunch of 30-something Canadians, North Americans, you would have immediately recognized the Calvin and Hobbes from your youth. But I realize I have a localization problem right now. Because you're all technical, mathy, understanding of things, I've also illustrated this on a Venn diagram written on a beer napkin, which might reveal more about how I do a lot of my business. So, why do we need to care? Here's a graph. There's a y-axis, there's an x-axis, and there's a bunch of dark bars that go up. This is a projection of e-commerce going forward. Going backwards, it's a bunch of bars that get smaller. If we were to extrapolate this even farther, more bars are going to be going up. E-commerce is not going away. It is, in my opinion, devouring traditional commerce and making it even more expensive and tougher to run what we consider our traditional brick and mortars. There are really cool hybrid models coming out. There are so many digital native brands doing e-commerce like crazy. And every project I see, I visualize how eventually it will need an e-commerce component. At some point in time, you want to take money from other people and give it to yourselves or other people, and all of that is what laps over e-commerce. Really, really quick classification, because this does matter for some of what I'll be talking about. There are hosted e-commerce solutions. Many of you are going to be very familiar with Shopify. Demandware would be like the Nike-sized Shopify. And they have their own whole set of problems, but I'm not going to be too focused on those. The ones that I have the most experience with and are the scariest to me are the self-hosted, the Magentos, the Soliduses. You control the servers, you control the traffic, you build the infrastructure, and homegrown, which is a huge, huge chunk of e-commerce, is 10-year-old projects that spun out of whatever weird brick and mortar was needed to build an online component. So the question becomes, now that we have all the precursors off the bat, is how much fear is healthy? And the answer is lots. The more fear you have going into this, the more respect you're going to treat it with. The more you can understand what could possibly go wrong, the more energy, time, and effort you're going to be spent to make your own life better going down the future. If you do not have enough fear in e-commerce, I guarantee you it will come to bite you. So this is the second time I've given this talk, so I've told this story once before to another audience, but it's my favorite illustration of how scary some of these things can be. This is not a proud story for either myself or my company, but I have a lot of other stories I'm not proud of, and I'll keep those ones to myself. We were about a year into e-commerce at this point. We had shipped a bunch of things. We thought we really understood how it worked. We thought we really understood. So we thought we understood e-commerce. It's fine, we'll do it. It'll come back. I believe in technology, right? You just need belief, not fear. Yeah. I don't think it's mine. Okay. So we were about a year into this. We really thought we figured it out. We've been shipping lots of products. We've been doing a bunch of things for different stores. And we started to expand. People had taken notice to us and given us more and more responsibility, led us to cooler and cooler e-commerce. This was an opportunity we had to sell what were effectively gift cards for a big, giant US company that we all know, that I, of course, will not name names for. but we were able to partner with them to let us sell US dollar gift cards in other currencies. What this allowed us to do is it allowed us to bring these like awesome services that everyone wanted to markets that weren't as available to them, and it worked. We shipped it on Monday, we watched it for 4 days, Friday rolled around, our team got together, we hit down to the pub, and started downing a few pints of beer. About 3 pints in, I looked down at my phone and realized I have 3 missed calls, and this text message. Get to a computer, we're under attack, it's about 18 grand so far. I fought my initial instinct, which was to order 7 more beers, and instead found the nearest Wi-Fi connection and got on the net. And what had happened was we were getting hit by a bunch of different bot accounts coming from a really varied number of places, all purchasing gift cards at incredibly high speeds. We didn't have an API into the gift card side. We couldn't cancel them live. So we were completely hosed. By the time we got the product shut down, taken off the website, we were about 23 G's in the hole. So sitting on the street at this point, I was trying to think to myself, okay, what can we possibly do? We have 23 grand of these outstanding gift cards out. What are we going to do? So we came up with the bright idea to look through the email logs and all of the gift cards we'd sent out to any of these things that were clearly fraudulent and start redeeming them ourselves. So lucky for me, due to time zones, I was able to get 12 nerds from another country all involved in redeeming these gift cards into their own accounts, and we would deal with the fallout of this later. It worked. We salvaged, I think, about $18,000 of them, so they got away with about 3 Gs. But it came down to us looking back and analyzing how we were getting hit. And we were getting hit in ways I didn't even know was possible. This was 5-ish, 6-ish years ago, and I had no idea the sophistication of attacks we were going to end up with. They were bots running a big theft of targets, like 2 million plus cards were stolen, and we were getting all of those run across our accounts. The bots were executing JavaScript. They looked like human being traffic. They hit a bunch of different things, and it was an incredibly sophisticated attack. I wasn't scared enough. So weeks later, when we hardened our systems, we dealt with a bunch of things. We went to visit this company we were partnered with in the States, and we sat down and we're like, okay guys, just so you know, we got hit kind of hard. We recovered 18 Gs. Can we please cancel them? Yada, yada. And I was sitting in this big boardroom in one of my favorite companies on earth, and the guy across from me said something I will never forget. And that was, oh yeah, we have an organized crime problem, and now you do too. I'm not gonna lie, my initial instinct was elated. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I was 25 years old, and I now have an organized crime problem. The company that we were working with said, yeah, we're gonna help you, we're gonna show you all the things we've been dealing with, all the attacks we've been mitigating, and we're gonna do our best to help you guys be able to fight organized crime. I felt like one of the untouchables. Maybe not Elliot Ness, but at least that guy over in the corner who was there watching the whole thing. And this elation lasted maybe the entirety of 4 minutes before I realized my servers are still running. Somewhere out there, I am still being attacked, and I am not prepared for this. But luckily, with a whole bunch more work and a whole bunch of I don't want to say specific work, but with a clearer understanding of how we were getting attacked, we were able to shut down more and more of them. Which taught us one of the most important lessons of e-com, which I think is probably a lesson applicable everywhere, but it's understand the risks of what you're doing. In our case, it's understanding the risks of what we're selling. Specifically, in e-com, there are a bunch of product-specific risks. If your product is easily convertible to cash, like we had where we were selling gift cards immediately redeemable, somebody's going to come after you. Somebody's going to put you in your crosshairs and say, I'm going to take them for cash. I promise you it will happen. It is only a matter of time. The amount of incredibly talented people out there that are trying to steal from me is mind-boggling. If you sell a bunch of apparel online, which is one we, I don't want to say specialize in, but do a lot of, you're going to have to deal with specific return fraud, return abuse. People are going to exploit your policies and exploit your technology to, exploit your goodwill. If you manufacture your own products, you're going to be spending an incredible amount of time on manufacturing and inventory issues. If you don't understand, there's that problem of, oh, maybe a batch of what we're selling is going to go bad, is going to have a problem, is going to get lost, and your system's not set up to handle back orders, to be able to fulfill back orders, to deal with all of these inventory problems. You are going to have to deal with that on the fly, and it's not a doable thing. If you are selling products of questionable legal status, and we used to sell e-cigarettes online back when that was new, occasionally our shipments would just disappear. No notice, no message, whatever. They would just make it to the border and disappear into the void. You have to build systems, you have to write code, you have to understand these are risks behind what you're selling. This is my personal favorite one. If you are selling a scarce good that is very valuable, you're going to have to deal with the reseller market. This is most noticeable in our Ticketmaster these days. It's so difficult to actually purchase tickets online because there are bots, there are collusions, there are incredible amounts of ways you can exploit the ticket system and resell these on StubHub. The most interesting and funniest one I've seen is shoe sales. I was once at a conference and somebody explained to me they sell a limited edition like shoe printing. I'm not really a shoe person, but these are so highly valued and so highly sought that they will pay people to bot attack specific shoe markets for later reselling. The technology-specific risks, I think we kind of understand better by being technology people, so not following them too hard. The third-party outages is a huge problem in our lives. In one of our stores, we have like payment gateway failover, so if Stripe fails, it'll try to process it on Braintree. There are tax services that go down all the time. You have to understand all the components that your store relies on in order to keep it up. Old and boring fraud is now what I consider the standard, hey, organized crime is coming after me. This is a bunch of stolen credit cards, a bunch of stolen user data, and running through your system. New and fascinating fraud, I'm not going to get too deep into because I actually don't want more people to know about it, but one of the most interesting ones I've seen was people have figured out you can ship to an Amazon warehouse location and in such a way that they can then use Amazon as a reseller to convert all of your products into cash, which is some of the more interesting fraud I've seen in the recent past. And unnecessary service costs. There's a chance your AWS bills will end up slightly large every now and then. But there's tools to help us with all these technology things. We're not the first people to do e-com. There's a large community of people all helping with it. Sift Science and Signify will do analysis on the browsers that are looking at it, how much does it look like people. It'll try to hook it to your social profiles. Braintree has like built-in fraud reporting tools. 3D Secure will do liability shifting. So if in fact a credit card goes through, another company will take the liability of any fraud charges. And then there's a bunch of really awesome attack mitigation tools. Rack Attack was invented by the guys at Kickstarter, I believe, who had to deal with these incredibly high volumes of traffic at random times, really impressive attacks. And any Rails app in general, but e-commerce specifically, I would highly recommend throwing Rack Attack in. It's very low effort to put in, but it will stop a lot of common intrusions. Cloudflare will do some protection against DDoS. I'm not personally a huge user of it, but it's definitely there for you. And all the monitoring in the world. We could have a talk on monitoring, and it could last the rest of the conference, but make sure there's no amount of monitoring you can have that's too much. So this is the first like truly actionable thing you can ask anyone to do when they start the e-com, and that's make a list. Get everyone together, have whatever harebrained thing you think could possibly go wrong, vocalize it, write it down, make sure people understand this is something that might happen. I would say for every hour we spend thinking about what could go wrong, it probably saves us 10 hours somewhere down the road by understanding it before it happens, by having clear pictures of how we're going to move forward. And yeah, spoilers, absolutely everything will go wrong. Given enough time running, your entire list will be exhausted. There's no limit to the amount of problems you can have running these production systems. This is my favorite example personally. It happened very recently, but we had a new client that was running on Cloudflare, and the DNS provider got DDoS'd. So the DNS provider of Cloudflare, of our site, of their hosting platform, got DDoS'd, and it was the only place that SSL termination was enabled. So in the giant chain of how we get web requests to these servers, Cloudflare was the only place that had the SSL private key that was able to unwrap it and forward the traffic on to another server. And that hosting provider was also suffering a DDoS from the same, it was when Dying DNS got hit. So this was a perfect storm of terribleness. You couldn't log into Heroku to fix anything, Cloudflare was down, the sites were not getting requests. Within maybe 15 minutes, we were on a Google Hangout with all the C-level people, 5 or 6 engineers, and we were not prepared for this. They literally, it wasn't our project, it wasn't our hosting at the time, but we needed to come up with a solution. We had no idea how long this was going to be down for, but we could watch the clock tick down, understanding we were losing thousands and thousands of dollars every minute this was going down. It was pretty exciting. So, after about 15 minutes of listening to harebrained ideas, none of which was working for us, I went back to one of our trusty fallbacks from Stembolt, which is this Nginx config. And it doesn't really matter what it says, that's not important. What matters is we understand there's a class of problems where you can't get traffic to your servers from the internet, but you can get traffic to a server. So anytime we need to, we rip through a Nginx proxy server, unwrap SSL on that, and forward it to wherever we need to go. What makes this awesome is I can spin this up on a DigitalOcean droplet and push all the traffic through there. So for about 24 hours, we ran an incredible amount of traffic through a DigitalOcean droplet that we spun up on the fly. This is it's scary for me, but maybe because I'm an old person. The older I get, the more I realize the generation coming in understands metrics so much better than I ever did. They understand how to deal with your business people, how to work with them, why all these things are really important. But they're some of the best tools you're going to have in e-com. You're going to have to deal with people that are going to be sending crazy requests at you that you might not understand why they want to do it. Maybe somewhere in that e-commerce domain is very, very valuable suggestions they're giving you, but you as a programmer can't see how they're going to affect traffic, affect conversions, affect dollar signs. So you establish shared terminology and shared numbers that you guys can start communicating in. For us, it's largely Google Analytics based. We live and breathe in our Google Analytics. When people ask us what to do, we ask what kind of returns they're expecting. We ask what's our measurements of success, how are these things going forward. And they let us build our relationships with our business people. And I'll tell you, the ones that are truly good at this, the ones that can communicate with developers in anything, but e-com specifically, and explain and build that shared language on how this is going to be making us all more money, they're incredibly valuable. E-commerce, for me, is hilarious, because what you see when you're going through your checkout is really just the tip of the iceberg. If you have a cart with 20 items in it, each one with 100 quantity, that gets filled from 9 different warehouses through the United States, we have to figure out how you're going to get that shipped to you. We have to figure out how are we going to split these packages, how are we going to put them into boxes and get these things delivered. There are entire, I don't want to say organizations, but there's entire businesses I know that make all of their money by doing this better than everyone else. They can better optimize their shipping costs. They can better optimize getting you your products faster, and that is, they're selling the same goods as everyone else. That's what distinguishes them as being a really successful business. Dylan, he was in the office, spent, I'd say, months writing a constraint solver in Ruby, optimizing it so we could take these really complex tens of thousands of units packing algorithms and getting their responses in a human acceptable time. And if you're lucky, people are going to be mad at you, which is great. It kind of borders Katrina's talk on the open source thing, and I have special feelings for this audience, because I promise you there are some incredibly nice people at MagmaConf that have opened up either the Spree or the Solid code base, run a git blame, saw my face, and was not happy with seeing me. I know this because I do it to myself all the time. I've git blamed our code base and been like, well, that guy's really terrible, and it's oftentimes me. The most famous case of this for us was once Solid started to gain traction, once we saw more people around the world using it, we realized how bad we were for the rest of the world. It started with a very nice German gentleman who maintains the Alchemy project, who asked to jump on a Google Hangout with me, and he led the conversation with, you are mean to Germans. And Tomas, who'd been very, very nice to us, reviewing pull requests for weeks at this point. We were giving him a spot on the core. He said, Clarke, you're really mean to Germans. And I go, wow, Tomas, like maybe it's a translation issue, like maybe, you know, I'm mean to Canadians too. Maybe it's not just you guys. And he said, no, Clarke, take a look at this. And he had a code sample prepared roughly like this for me. And I know the projector's a little dark, so you might not be able to read this, but it's generically a snippet of a form. In Rails, it has labels for first name, last name, address, and state, and a weird translation helper that hooks into the Rails IATN to spit out the localized things of this. And I go, well, come on, so I don't see what your problem is. I mean, we're using like accessible labels, we're using like translation helpers. You should be able to do whatever you need to with this. And he came back to me and said, no, Clarke, now look at this. And this doesn't really matter what it is, but it's an order summary partial. It spits out a little bit about the state of an order. And the problem is in the very first line, where the order status is the same key we had from the address. So, as a Canadian, we don't have states, which I believe you guys do here in Mexico. We have provinces. So if we were to take this and have translated it properly for our application, we would have ended up with something that looked like this. And the order's province would have been complete. We had fought, well, I say we, but the project had fought good localization, good translation practices for so long. It was an incredible effort to go through everything and handle the localization correctly. It's stuff Rails provides to you more or less by default. We've gone out of our way to make it bad for the Germans, and I'm sure bad for the Mexicans as well. But over the last couple versions, we worked really hard and got all these things cleaned up. So I got Tomas, after we were all done, I got Tomas back on a Hangout and said, okay, dude, here are all the commits. I'm sorry. I really appreciate your effort. And I promised from then on to be nice to Germans. And as foreshadowing, he smiled at me and said, can we set up another meeting for tomorrow? The meeting invite was titled Bat Taxes. In North America, I've always personally, I've grown up in Canada, I've lived in North America, I've always looked at everything as a very North American-centric thing, and understanding now I was part of a larger global econ community, I realized that wasn't going to be doable going on. So I had to learn about other people's tax systems. And of all the scary things I'm going to talk about, this one is truly terrifying, but more from the technical implementation than anything. So in Canada, same as the States, we have a tax model that looks like this. It is our total of, the total of an order is the price plus the applicable taxes, and the applicable taxes are dependent on where you are. So if I'm in British Columbia, I have something called a PST, I have a GST. If I'm in California, I have some random taxes for that. So if I buy a $10 t-shirt in Vancouver, it's the $10 of the t-shirt plus $1.40 in taxes, and I pay $11 for it. All pretty simple stuff. That is entirely new concept to me at the time, and it was, I also believe this is what happens out here in Mexico, so for you guys this is going to be, well, what do you mean there's another way? So the total is the price, and the price is the taxes plus your revenue, and the taxes, at least in Europe, and I'm not sure here in Mexico, but it's the VAT rate of the shipping country. So if I were to buy a 10-euro t-shirt in Berlin, which has a 19% VAT, if I walk into a store, how this is working is my 10 euros, 8.40 goes to the store I'm buying it from, and $1.60 goes to the government. And there are some really great things about this. It's country level. In Canada, we have to care about it on province by province. In California, you can cross the street 2 times and end up with 3 different tax rates. So that's got a lot of advantages for consumers. Implementation is pretty crazy. You have to know the price you're showing people, and you have to show people the correct price. So if I'm in Berlin shopping online, I need to see a price that factors in the shipping, the country I am going to ship for from the minute you show up on that site. It requires effective omniscience. I don't personally know that as a programmer, or as a like shipping calculator, until after I grew my organization. So this was incredibly difficult to wrap my head around. And all the rounding problems that come with this are just devastating. But the Germans were cool. They worked through the localization problem with us, and we got through all of that. We then took the VAT system. We'd spent months and months and months refactoring the tax systems. There's an excellent talk by the man that did it, named Martin, who's up on the SolidusConf website from last year. We ended up taking these 2 people on board for ourselves, and have now started up a Stembolt office in Europe around them. Because anyone willing to refactor your tax system is somebody you definitely want to be working with forever. In North America, these are the payments I grew up with. Not Apple Pay, of course, but I grew up as stuff online is bought with credit cards. It was amazing for me to understand, country-wise, we're the minority. The rest of the world has all kinds of different interesting payment methods that they prefer to shop with online. And our credit card, PayPal-centric view on things wasn't very friendly to everyone else. My favorite payment method we've ever implemented is a Japanese payment method called Conveni. And here is an artistic representation of how you pay with Conveni. You show up at a website and you tell the checkout, I want to pay with Conveni. And they go, okay, what corner store do you want to pay at? And you go, okay, I guess I want to pay at 7-Eleven. There's lots of 7-Elevens in Japan, there's one on every corner. And they go, okay, here's a 4-digit code. So in order to purchase online using Conveni, you take your 4-digit code, you walk down to the 7-Eleven, you look for a large red machine that looks like this. You navigate your way through a half-dozen screens. This machine will also sell you museum tickets, it'll get you bus passes, or for your online purchases. You eventually find the place to purchase online, you get your 4-digit code, but you don't pay at the machine. It prints you out a receipt that you then take to the front of the 7-Eleven and hand to the cashier. So in order to pay online, I've now walked downstairs, walked to the Conveni machine, walked to the cashier, and you check out with the receipt like it's a regular 7-Eleven line item. This triggers an asynchronous event from the Conveni servers that will send a message back to your e-com store and say, yes, this thing is now actually paid. So in Conveni land, we end up with all of these orders that might be abandoned, that might be completed at weird hours, that might be whatever, and you have to keep track of all of these things. In Europe, there is a provider called Adyen that promises to do their best to make all of this same for you, and these are like their list of most popular payment methods. I have used many of them, but not all of them. Many of them involve walking down to the bank and paying for your online transactions at a bank. As a North American, this is crazy to me. Like I have localization problems, but our e-com systems need to understand that it seems like most of the world really wants these asynchronous payment solutions. And dealing with payments is the scariest and most crazy thing we have. I will tell you, as we became a larger and more successful company and started dealing with more and more numbers of things, we once changed our PayPal capture code to quit capturing PayPal payments, which we didn't realize until about $24,000 of them had expired. Understanding how and where your payments are failing is incredibly difficult. You need to be watching all of these things like an absolute hawk. You need to be knowing when are payments being settled. How can I ensure they're being settled? Are they being settled in the right currency? Are they going to the right bank account? Can I remit payments reasonably enough? The asynchronous nature of a bunch of them just make it infinitely more difficult. So these were sort of my best chance to scare somebody. What I've thrown at you were the understandable, hey, you're going to run into these absolutely for sure, but I have a few more cases that I don't want to go into too much depth, but hopefully we'll finish off whatever terror you might not have. Because of the way our testing environments were set up, I once had a co-op run a series of test cases against the live system of a fulfillment provider. The fulfillment providers are the guys responsible for actually taking something off of the shelf, putting it in a box, slapping a shipping label on it, and getting it shipped out. We packed $1,500 of pants into boxes by the time they called us. This wasn't like 20 pairs of pants. It was $1,500 of packing fees to pack hundreds of these boxes, all going to the same address before they finally called us and said, are you sure you want to be shipping all these pants? And of course we didn't. And if it weren't for them, if it weren't for their monitoring, if it weren't for their smart people, we would have shipped tens and tens of thousands of dollars of product out the door. We still communicate with services in FTP. Lots of e-com is just terrifyingly scary, and oftentimes the more successful, the bigger brands, the bigger stores you deal with, the more you're going to find FTPs powering it somewhere in the back end. When I was young, I used to frown at soap services. When people handed me soap services and said, hey Clarke, send all this XML back and forth, I would go, XML, what year is this? I know kill for soap services. If you are running a big box store and I'm trying to place things inside you, and you have any form of web services at all, you are my favorite people to deal with. This is a famous story in the company that I've shared at a few conferences. We once picked up a store whose developers had gone a little bit crazy because nobody really understands e-com, and they were left off on their own, and they started writing an entire suite of daemons and servers for Linux in PHP. What killed us was the mail server ran so slow in performance that when everyone would show up to work in the morning and refresh their email, the website would go down because it was running on the same database as the rest of the website. So as we started to peel back layers of how this is working and where it's going, we eventually found out the SSH server we were connecting to the boxes with was in fact written in PHP as well. Of course, all running as root. And so I hope this has scared you. I care a lot about these things because this is how we spread it. This fear, I know fear might be an unfortunate reaction human beings have, but it's also a really useful one. We develop fear for a reason. It enables us it gives us the impetus to improve our own situations. We can use that fear. We can look at it and we can say like, okay, your life could get really, really bad unless you know about this and this and this and this and this and care about this. So as an e-com person, I want that fear to be more public. I want people to know about what kind of crazy pager duties you can get. I want you to know about how sometimes you're going to have to set your life aside in order to like run an e-com store on Black Friday. And I hope as a community, and I know a bunch of the Magma guys are great for this, we help each other out. And if you're still not scared, this is my email. You can join us at Solidus 2017 in London in May at conf.solidus.io. These were the stories I could tell in front of an audience, probably being filmed. Every beer you feed me, I promise to tell you a worse and worse story until you are terrified. Pardon? Yeah. Thanks to MagmaLabs for organizing. We've now organized conferences, and this is just an incredible amount of work. Watching it executed so well has been fantastic for me. The rest of you, thank you for attending. Sorry if I did not localize some things very well. And thank you very much to the country of Mexico for hosting. Everyone we've met has been insanely nice to us, from the first person at the airport to like everyone here. So again, thank you all very much.
Well, thank you so much, Clarke. And I wanna ask if you guys have any questions for him. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Yes.
As far as the attacks, mostly where were they coming from? Like, were they from like a specific region of the world? Or are they coming from all over the place?
So the most, when we got hit that first time, it was not, sorry, one more time. Obvious attacks come from Russia, come from Ukraine, come from mid-Europe. Those are relatively easy to identify, relatively easy to deal with. The ones we saw there were all proxied through botnets in the US. Most of the traffic was Comcast. There was a little bit from random other providers, but if you were attempting to geolocate the IPs, they all looked like real, relatively good, relatively reasonable traffic. Yeah, terrifying.
Any other questions? No?
Cool. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Clarke.
Okay, that's my work.
So natural. Okay, so guys, I know that you've noticed we're kind of on schedule, so we're going to have a 15-minute coffee break. But first, we're going to be giving out the swag bags. The one thing you're all here for, I guess. You go to a conference for the swag. And only since we want to keep this flowing, we're going to be giving away only to those whose last names begins between the letters A to N. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, N. And that's it. If you are O, P, Q, R, S, T, and the rest, we're going to have your package ready on the next coffee break. So 15 minutes, and we'll be back here.
So it's 12:10. So we would expect you to be here by 12:25, please, if you can be on time. Thank you.